Welcome everyone, this is Andres Restart, and this time we're going to be discussing when and what to expect from a Skyward Sword HD. Now, full disclaimer, as of the time of this recording, it's literally a day before a recently announced Nintendo Direct, the major Nintendo Direct that's happening tomorrow, which I would believe is going to be, it's September 6th, and there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be coming out of that Direct. Potentially an announcement for Skyward Sword HD. Now, do I think Skyward Sword HD is going to be announced tomorrow? No, I don't, but I do think Skyward Sword HD is an eventuality and we may see it sooner or later, but the question is when. So I don't really think 2018 is the right time for Skyward Sword HD, even though this year is kind of like the year of ports for the Nintendo Switch, and the reason being is because I just don't think it's the right time in terms of like the Zelda hype cycle. So Breath of the Wild came out early 2017, and then we had the DLC come out late 2017, so I think 2018 is going to be kind of like that year where we just take a break from Zelda, and then come 2019 we might get a couple smaller Zelda games and maybe some teases or concepts art about the next major Zelda game, and that's how I think the Zelda hype cycle is going to go. So in 2019 we may get a 2D Zelda, or we may get an HD remake for Skyward Sword HD, and I think that would be a good time for us to get the remake. Now, even though I think 2019 might be the best bet to see Skyward Sword HD, I don't necessarily think it's for sure going to happen, because I also think there's a possibility we may never get a Skyward Sword HD. Now let me explain why, and the reason has all to do with the controls. So on the Nintendo Switch we have the Joy-Cons, and I actually think the Joy-Cons would be a great way to implement motion controls and make the motion controls even better than when they were on the Nintendo Wii with the Wii Motion Plus. However, here's the thing about the Nintendo Switch, it has multiple modes of play. You can play in dock mode at home, you can play in tabletop mode, and you can play in handheld mode. And while there are games that can only be playable in either docked or handheld mode on the Nintendo Switch, when it comes to Nintendo published games, every single Nintendo published game is playable in every single mode for the Nintendo Switch. So I don't think they would publish a game where you can't play it in handheld mode. And that's the thing about Skyward Sword, the entire game is centered around the motion controls, and when you're playing in handheld mode, guess what? The Joy-Cons are locked into the Nintendo Switch, and it's portable. It's a portable system, but you can't waggle around the controls because the screen won't be there. Now, it would work in tabletop mode, but it won't work when the entire system, along with the controllers, are in your hand. You could use gyro aiming, sure, but you won't be able to do like directional inputs for sword attacks and such. So how could they handle that? Well, there's two options. One, they could release the game. There's three options actually. They could release the game, right, and the game will just not be, you won't be able to play in handheld mode. But I don't think Nintendo would do that, because they haven't done it for any of their games, and I don't think they're going to change for Skyward Sword HD. The other option is to just not come out with a game, because they don't want to reformat the entire game. It's just too much effort. They rather just focus their development, resources on a different HD remake or a new game altogether. But if Skyward Sword HD is going to happen, they would just have to reformat the controls so it could work in handheld mode. And I think it wouldn't be too hard, but that's just my perspective. I'm not a developer, so I don't know what exactly they would do. I also don't understand the entire image that that Nintendo would have for Skyward Sword, so I'm just saying there's a possibility that Skyward Sword HD may not happen because of that handheld control issue. Now, if they were to get by this, which I think they probably will, but I'm just bringing up the possibilities here. If they were to get by that issue, I think the way they could handle it is simply utilizing the additional face buttons on the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Wii had A and the D-pad, right, and the B trigger. The Nintendo Switch has more buttons, that is X and Y. So maybe they could utilize those additional face buttons for additional sword attacks. Maybe, the B button does horizontal and vertical attacks, and then X and Y can do diagonal attacks, and depending on how you're aiming the control stick, that's how you could sort of get the different sort of directional attacks, and they wouldn't have to change up the actual enemy AI and how they move and function when you're in handheld mode too much. And that's basically how I think they could format the game so it could work in handheld mode. So now that we got by the sort of, I guess, the controller blockage, right, I think the game would actually play really well on the Nintendo Switch with the Joy-Cons. They could even take advantage of HD Rumble, use it to improve the dowsing feature so you can get a better understanding of where items are. It could feel really good. If you played Super Mario Odyssey there are certain moons that you could collect by walking around the ground, and you could feel a moon emanating from the ground, and the HD Rumble will give you a better tactile sensation of where it might be, and they could do something similar with the dowsing feature from Skyward Sword. Another thing they could do is actually fix up the swimming in Skyward Sword. A lot of people had a problem with the motion controlled swimming, and the reason they did that is because guess what? The Wii didn't have a second analog stick, but the Nintendo Switch does, so they'll probably rework the swimming, right? But I definitely think the sword, motion controlled sword play will still stay intact when you're in docked mode, and it'll work just fine, and it'll actually probably feel better because the Joy-Cons are better motion controllers than the Wii Motion Plus. Now, controls aside, what other sort of improvements can we expect from Skyward Sword HD? Well, the most obvious one is that the game will be in HD. If you've ever seen any footage from Skyward Sword running on the Dolphin emulator, it looks amazing. The game's crisp and clean and very colorful and vibrant. It's in a, you know, I would expect Skyward Sword HD to be in a beautiful 1080p, you know, there's no aliasing, it's all very fluid and nice. I expect a solid frame rate, which is, you know, I don't think there's any frame rate issues with Skyward Sword back in the day, but it would still stay solid. And I also think that they would probably improve the lighting engine and make things pop and look really, really good. Maybe even add some additional particle effects, and the game would just look amazing. Especially with all the sword fighting, when you could see the swords sort of clash, they could really do some really cool stuff with particle effects and lighting. And basically maybe a slightly bigger bump than what we saw from Wind Waker HD. Although Wind Waker looked amazing because of the art style, and it just has aged so gracefully. But in terms of seeing that improved lighting engine and maybe a couple other additional effects, the game could look really, really, really good. Now, aside from graphics and just reformatting the controls for the Nintendo Switch, what else could be done for Skyward Sword HD? I don't think there will be any dramatic changes to the gameplay or what you can actually do in Skyward Sword HD, but there will be some minor changes. So like in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, when they were remade, they did go back to the game and sort of rework the pace of the gameplay so it flows better and it's a lot quicker to get through the game. They reworked some of the fetch quests, they made the beginnings a lot quicker and easier to get through, you know, the tutorial, and I think they'll do the same thing with Skyward Sword because it definitely had those issues as well, especially with the beginning of the game and the late game fetch quests. I think they'll definitely maybe shorten the amount of things you have to collect with the fetch quests at the end of Skyward Sword, and also probably, you know, cut out all the verbose tutorials that are offered at the beginning of Skyward Sword so you can really get into the action of the game at a quicker pace. One other thing I could see them doing is maybe cutting out the amount of time Fi interrupts you and stops you to give you useless advice. I think they'll definitely tone that down, but of course you'll always have access to Fi to get that information if you want it or need it. Now, aside from those quality of life changes, I guess maybe they may offer some sort of additional challenge mode. They did it in Twilight Princess, so I think they could do something similar as well with Skyward Sword. Maybe it gives you another item that perhaps makes your bird stronger or could fly more in Skyloft and all along the clouds and the little planetoid areas there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the game will probably load a little faster, it'll run a little better, and that's pretty much what I expect for Skyward Sword HD. Actually, there is one more thing I think they would do, and that's offer hero mode from the very beginning. They did it for Wind Waker, they did it for Twilight Princess, I think they'll do the same for Skyward Sword. And for Skyward Sword, I think it would make a bigger difference because Skyward Sword has a lot of crafting with potions and items, and the thing is, in the normal playthrough of the game, you don't really need that many potions or all these super improved items, but in hero mode there's way less life, it's a lot harder, so I think by playing through hero mode, the game, you know, all of the crafting is a lot more important, and that definitely, you know, I think actually improves the whole dynamic of the game and makes it a better game. So offering hero mode from the beginning will be a nice little feature as well and make the game worth it for a lot more people. And that's pretty much what I expect for Skyward Sword HD. I think the graphics are going to look a little bit better, they're going to definitely improve the pace of gameplay, you know, they're going to reduce the amount of times Fi will annoy you in the game, it's going to look gorgeous, and it's going to have hero mode from the very beginning. And I think all of those changes are going to be pretty solid, pretty good, and you know, for those who never gave Skyward Sword a try, they'll be able to play it on the Nintendo Switch. You'll have Skyward Sword available in handheld mode on the go, and it's just going to be a really cool package when we do eventually see it. If we see it, but I think we will. If I was betting, then I'd say we will eventually see Skyward Sword HD, probably in 2019. But heck, maybe they'll announce it tomorrow and I'm wrong about this prediction. But I guess we'll find out soon, really soon. So anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick little video where I just gave my thoughts on Skyward Sword HD, and I'll see you all really soon. Bye.